You are listening to the Coins, Currency, and American History podcast, presented by Littleton Coin Company.
Every great civilization leaves behind its ruins, its art, and its heroes. But the story of America can be told through something smaller, something we can hold in our hands. A coin. Coins are the fingerprints of a nation. This is the story of the United States of America. From colonies to social experiment to global economic leader.
Episode 26, World War I and the End of Isolation. History often remembers World War I for its trench warfare, alliances, and fallen empires. But those were just the tip of the iceberg. The war showed that factories and financial strength could shape events in ways armies and navies alone could not, and force the nation to decide what kind of country it would become in a connected world. America had long preferred distance and isolation, but modern industry and credit made separation harder to maintain. The United States found itself drawn onto the world stage, and it would rise to the occasion, changing the balance of power forever. In 1914, Europe saw itself as a center of modern life. Its capital set fashion and culture, its empires controlled vast territories, its banks financed much of the world trade. The United States lacked that kind of colonial reach or diplomatic prestige, but it had unmatched productive power. By 1910, America turned out more steel than Britain and Germany together. Factories standardized parts and processes. Railroads tied farms, mines, and ports across a continent. Oil flowed from Texas fields, and machinery poured from Midwestern plants. American industry and European influence ran on parallel tracks. The war would bring them together. On June 28, 1914, Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated by Serbian anarchists. Just 5 weeks later, nearly all of Europe was at war. President Woodrow Wilson declared American neutrality. For most of the nation's history, the United States had maintained neutrality through physical separation, protected by oceans and the Monroe Doctrine. However, this was an industrial age, and neutrality didn't mean economic isolation, it meant profit. Factories kept running, markets kept moving, American goods, steel, food, textiles, and coal crossed the Atlantic to the Allies. As the war continued, the Allies needed more than they could pay for in gold, so they turned to credit. New York banks extended loans, American firms carried accounts. The United States stayed out of the fighting, but helped finance it. When the United States entered the war 3 years later in 1917, its military was relatively small and inexperienced, but the main challenge was logistics. Armies needed rifles and ammunition, artillery and trucks, food and fuel. Success on the battlefield depended on the ability to produce supplies at scale and move them quickly. The country's industrial system proved more than ready. Standardized parts and coordinated railroads allowed rapid shifts in production. Mass production replaced older methods, and the principles that built the Model T proved equally valuable in wartime. The United States did not win the war single-handedly, but it changed what was needed for victory. Before the war, London and other European centers dominated global finance. Trade settled in sterling, and capital flowed from European banks. The war reversed that flow. Gold moved westward. Bonds issued through New York gained importance, while the new Federal Reserve helped stabilize the system. By the armistice, the United States had shifted from a debtor nation to a major creditor, and the dollar began to challenge sterling in international dealings. Financial power no longer remained in the shadows. It had become a very visible form of influence. Meanwhile, as factories and banks mobilized for war, The nation's coins and paper money told their own story of American strength and resolve. The United States Mint kept the presses running at Philadelphia and in branch facilities that had opened in earlier decades. And everyday Americans carried the beautiful designs born from the coinage renaissance Theodore Roosevelt had championed just a few years earlier. The Mercury dime, the Standing Liberty Quarter, and the Walking Liberty half-dollar, all introduced in 1916, circulated widely as the country prepared for, then entered the conflict. And their fresh artistic look reflected the confident young nation stepping forth onto the world stage. Gold coins, such as the St. Gaudens Double Eagle, continued to move through commerce, a reminder that the United States alone among the world's major powers stayed firmly on the gold standard throughout the war. American paper money also underwent changes. Federal Reserve notes, first issued a year before the fighting began in Europe, expanded rapidly to meet wartime needs, and the Treasury launched the Liberty Loan campaigns to finance the United States' entry into the war. Millions of American citizens bought these bonds, turning their personal savings into direct support for the troops and factories overseas. Today, those surviving Liberty Loan bonds remain prized collectibles, tangible links to the patriotic drive that financed victory. The coins and pockets and the notes and wallets kept the home front moving, even as the dollar itself gained new stature abroad. The United States entered the war late and left early. It helped shape the peace, but then refused to join the League of Nations. Congress preferred to keep distance even after tasting global leadership. Politically, American isolationism lived on. But in practice, the world had grown dependent on American grain, credit, and factory output. True separation was no longer possible. When the guns fell silent in 1918, Europe lay exhausted. Empires had fallen, economies were strained, borders and maps were redrawn, at least in Europe. The United States did not expand or lose territory in the war. It remained physically separated from Europe, and it was not yet the military superpower it would become. But it was now inexorably tied to global community. America had become the world's leading economy, with the capital, credit, gold, and industrial capacity the rest of the world desperately needed. And in the 20th century, power was determined not only by armies and navies, but also by industry, production, and financial reach. And these were among America's greatest strengths. People called World War I the war to end all wars, but the peace that followed proved short-lived. Credit turned into tension, debt and reparations bred grievances. The peace treaties left unfinished business. The United States would try to turn inward and remain apart, but the global economy now ran through American banks and factories. The dollar and the assembly line had tied the nation to the wider world in ways that would never be unraveled. European nations had entered the war confident that centuries of imperial history guaranteed their futures. But when the conflict ended, influence had shifted westward. The American century had arrived, ushered in by unmatched industrial capacity and the quiet leverage of credit. The nation that had long avoided foreign entanglements had become essential to the modern world. In the next episode of Coins, Currency, and American History, the nation rides a wave of credit, speculation, and new consumer habits, even as a decade of celebration masks fractures forming beneath the surface. Next time, the Roaring Twenties and the new age of credit, culture, and consumerism. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Coins, Currency, and American History podcast presented by Littleton Coin Company. You can find out more about coins and currency in our free Learn Center at www.littletoncoin.com/learn. It's filled with fascinating facts about U.S. coins, world coins, ancient coins, paper money, and more, as well as helpful tips for collectors of all levels. You'll even find free collector guides, checklists, and virtual albums to help you get started and keep track of your growing collection. And while you're there, be sure to check out our online store. Visit www.littletoncoin.com today.